Welcome to the quick guide to the active and passive voices from the Learner Development Service at Manchester Metropolitan University. First of all, let's clarify what we mean by active and passive voices in writing. The active voice means we are focusing on the person or thing who is doing the action or the verb in the sentence. For example, the Romans founded Manchester in AD 79. Here the focus is on the Romans who are performing the verb. The verb we use here is founded. This is the active verb form. If we change this sentence to the passive, we would move the focus from the performer of the action, the Romans, to the receiver of the actions, Manchester. The word order changes to reflect this change in focus, and the verb form changes too. The sentence will now read, Manchester was founded by the Romans in AD 79. This now uses the passive verb form, was founded. We make the passive using the verb be. The verb be can be is, am, are, was, were, or being. We also use the past participle. This is the verb form which comes naturally after the word have. For example, with the verb speak, we would say have spoken. This means the past participle is spoken. If you are struggling to work out the past participle of a verb, you can find extensive helpful guides online or use a dictionary to help you. Using the passive in academic writing is quite controversial. In order to make your work sound direct, clear and strong, it is usually better to use the active voice. This is why you might get feedback from your tutor saying you use the passive voice too much, or why you might see Microsoft Word underlining your work in green and giving you the message, passive voice, consider revising. However, there are some occasions when it is necessary or helpful to use the passive voice. This is okay in academic writing, as long as you use it occasionally and for a specific reason. Let's have a look at those reasons now. We do not always need to say the perpetrator of an action, because we often do not know or care who it is. We can use the passive to focus on the relevant information instead. For example, shortly after the Second World War, Piccadilly Gardens was used as an allotment. We do not need to know who exactly was growing potatoes and carrots in this sentence, so we use the passive and omit this information. It is also fairly obvious from the context that we are referring to a group of people in Manchester. Another example is, a Bob the Builder puppet was stolen from the Museum of Science and Industry. As we do not know who stole the puppet, we can use the passive voice to focus on the thing stolen rather than the thief. It is usually best to avoid the first and second person in academic writing. For more information on this, please see our video on first, second and third person. As an example, you may have written this sentence. I will use two methods to measure the levels of industry-related air pollution in Manchester city centre. This sentence is active and it uses the word I. To avoid using the word I, you can make the sentence passive and omit this information. For example, two methods will be used to measure the levels of industry-related air pollution in Manchester city centre. It is still clear to your reader that you are conducting the research, but you have maintained a formal tone by avoiding the word I. When you are writing an assignment, you should aim to sound unbiased and impersonal. For this reason, you may wish to avoid directly blaming someone for mistakes. For example, errors were made in the 2001 census, which resulted in the loss of £7.5 million in funding for Manchester. You have not directly accused anyone of making the mistakes, which makes your work sound more polite and neutral. It is also important that you do not accuse your reader of holding a particular opinion. Therefore, avoid saying you might think. Alternatively, you can say, it may be thought that Manchester is only famous for football and Coronation Street. This means you do not directly address your reader or assume they hold a particular view. Here is a summary of the different reasons to use the passive. Remember that the passive can sound indirect and make your sentences more convoluted, so it's best to just stick to these reasons for using the passive and aim for an active voice in the majority of your writing. You may wish to pause the video now and have a go at the activity underneath. There are 3 sentences. For each sentence, decide whether it is active or passive. Then practice rewriting them in the opposite voice. For example, change the active sentence to passive. After you've done this, compare the two sentences and decide which would be better for academic writing and try to give a reason why. Pause the video now to have a go, and when you're ready to see the answers, press play and they will appear on the screen. Here are our example answers. Sentence 1 uses the passive voice. Here we have rewritten it in the active. Many Mancunians consider Piccadilly Gardens an eyesore. In this case, the active is slightly better. There is no clear reason to use the passive, and it makes the sentence a little bit longer. To save your word count and sound more direct, use the active here. Sentence 2 is active. In the passive, it reads, "Very little is known about the Alpine men on the roof of 79 Piccadilly." The passive is a little better here because people is very general, and it isn't really important to say who knows very little if it's just a general lack of knowledge we're talking about. Sentence 3 is also active. We have changed it to the passive. Reports that Manchester's Albert Hall is haunted may be dismissed. This is better in this instance because we have avoided using the word you, which directly addresses the reader and makes an assumption about their opinion. Thank you for watching our video. We hope you found it useful and you can now start to apply what you have learned to your academic writing. Don't forget to check out some of our other videos and consider joining the writing project or one of our one-off workshops for more study skills support. Alternatively, use these contact details to get in touch with us and ask any question you have.